五大訴求，五大訴求 ，Fight for freedom， Fight for freedom， Five demands， Five demands， 還我公義，釋放義士，還我公義，釋放義士，還我公義 ，Fight for freedom， Stand in Hong Kong，Fight for freedom， Stand in Hong Kong。Our case, Hong Kong is not China.
Hong Kong is not China.
Save our case, Hong Kong is not China.
Hong Kong is not China.
I'd like to gently remind you to please follow the government guidelines to stay safe and keep at least 2 meters apart from each other. And make sure you have a face mask on. And we want to extend our appreciation to Greater Manchester Police for their approval of this event and protecting all communities. 想好多謝大家咁熱心抽啲時間嚟支持我哋呢個。So today you're going to find out why we have this event, why we have these beautiful artwork, and we are going to have a very, very special guest to share his speech with us, his views and his thoughts. He needs no introduction, Mr. Benedict Rogers, but we will be introducing him in a bit. So why are we here today? What is this event about? Today is very special. All over the world, there are many gatherings for many meaningful causes. Today, we are going to focus on a specific one. And at the same time, this is happening in London as well. Today, I'm going to talk to you about 12 Hong Kong youth who have been captured on a boat, who were found on the boat arrested as they were leaving Hong Kong, and they are now currently detained in China. You may ask me, what's the problem with that? What's the concern? I'm going to give you 3 main points. One, these 12 youth were denied a choice and access to their own lawyers to find someone to represent their case. Would you feel confident and reassured if you cannot choose somebody to represent your case? Do you think that you will get a fair trial? Do you think these 12 youth will get a fair trial? One of them is only 16 years old. Secondly, they were denied any communication or access to speak to their family and loved ones. Their families were denied access to communicate and speak to these 12 youth. Over 38 days, not even a call, not even a phone call. I cannot start to imagine how the youth would feel. I cannot start to imagine how your families would feel. Is this right? Would you be able to sit comfortably if you know your loved one was taken away and you cannot even have a single word? Sadly, with no access to information and communication between these 12 youth and their representatives of lawyers and families, we are uncertain whether they are getting the medical attention that they deserve. A few of them have medical conditions that require medical care and attention. To make a very kind and strong request, we would like to strongly request the legal, safe return of the 12 Hong Kong youth back to Hong Kong for transparent rule of law. We urge our good Chinese and Hong Kong government to work with us to true strength and compassion by returning these 12 youth back to Hong Kong where they belong and go through transparent rule of law, a fair, transparent trial. It is also festival, and it is a very symbolic day for us, especially in East Asia, because this is the day that we reunite with our family members and loved ones and friends, like tonight here, with you all. And we really wish and hope that these 12 youth can return home as soon as possible to be with their loved ones. The reason why we have a vote is because we also have some paper, some time. We would like to invite you to write your thoughts, your blessings for the 12 youth, and you can just hook them onto the vote there. Our next guest speaker, this gentleman has one of the biggest hearts I've ever known. He is very kind, he is very generous, and he is extremely brave. He's an international humanitarian activist. He wears many hats, but he is currently also the founder and chief executive of Hong Kong Watch. Let's put our hands together for Mr. Benedict Rogers.
What I want to say is Gong Fuk Hong Kong Si Doi Gak Ming. Gong Fuk Hong Kong Si Doi Gak Ming. It's a great privilege to be here this evening. And I want to say, first of all, that I've come specially from London to be with you in Manchester today, just for this occasion. Some of you might ask, why am I not speaking in the protest in London? Why have I come to Manchester? And my answer to that is, firstly, I speak in many protests for Hong Kong in London. But this is a struggle that is not confined either to the streets of Hong Kong or to the protests of London, but to the streets and the corridors of power and every arena that we have across the free world. Because this is a fight not only for the freedom and human rights and dignity and rule of law and autonomy of Hong Kong and Hong Kongers. It is a fight for freedom itself. A fight for freedom against tyranny, and a fight that every one of us who believes in freedom should be engaged with. That's why I've come to Manchester to be with you today. When I was invited to come to Manchester tonight, a few weeks ago, I said yes immediately. In the last few days, because of the surge in the COVID-19 pandemic, several times I asked the question, should I still come? But I thought, no, this is too important. This is about the fight for freedom for the entire world, and especially at this particular time for the 12 courageous Hong Kong youth. For those of you who don't know, I'll just say very briefly that I'm committed to this fight for Hong Kong, both because I believe in freedom, but also because Hong Kong was once my home. And although I do not live there anymore, and as many of you know, I cannot go there anymore, at least until it is free, Hong Kong will always live on in my heart. Lived in Hong Kong for the first 5 years after the handover, from 1997 to 2002. When I left Hong Kong in 2002, I never imagined that we would see the day that we see today of Hong Kong's freedoms, autonomy, the rule of law being destroyed in so many ways, but most dramatically by the recent national security law. And I never expected to see the day where people would be fleeing Hong Kong by boat and ending up in jail in mainland China. 6 years ago, when the umbrella movement happened in Hong Kong, and by the way, whenever I go to any event on Hong Kong, I always carry my yellow umbrella. When the umbrella movement happened, I knew that I had to speak out for Hong Kong. and I started to speak out and campaign personally. And then 3 years later, 3 years ago, in 2017, I knew that we needed an organization, and that's when I founded Hong Kong Watch 3 years ago. But over the last year, with all the terrible events in Hong Kong, the police brutality, the courageous protests, the national security law, I knew that what was at one time something that I was trying to do in my spare time, I knew that I had to give more time to it. And so this week, this last Monday, I began a new role with Hong Kong Watch as the full-time chief executive, because I want to give this struggle much more of my time. I still have other things I'm doing as well, but I am now devoted the vast majority of my time to this struggle. I don't want to take too much of your time, but let me just draw to a conclusion by saying a little bit briefly about what we in Hong Kong Watch will go on fighting for. Basically, we believe there are three things that are needed. Firstly, we need targeted sanctions on officials in the Chinese and Hong Kong governments who are responsible for human rights violations and for destroying Hong Kong's freedoms. Secondly, we need the international community and the entire free world to build a coalition, to coordinate, to collaborate, to work together to put pressure on China to stop the destruction of Hong Kong's freedoms. And thirdly, we need assistance from our government in the UK and from other governments around the world for those Hong Kongers who need to get out of Hong Kong. Our objective should not be for Hong Kong people to flee Hong Kong, but the reality is increasing numbers of people do need to, and we need to coordinate a global response, not just for British national overseas status holders, although I welcome what the British government has offered there, but more is needed to help those who aren't BNOs, and also to help those who come to this country to settle, to address some of the challenges in our system, and to find a welcome here if they need it. We also need the Hong Kong police to be called to account, and since that can't happen in Hong Kong itself, we need international action to hold an international independent inquiry and to place targeted sanctions on the Hong Kong police who have committed such atrocities against Hong Kong people. And most importantly, as the specific reason why we're gathered here tonight, and I want to pay tribute to everybody who's been involved in the amazing creative work of creating this boat and the other artwork that we see around us. The most important thing that we call for tonight is for the 12 Hong Kong youth to be returned to Hong Kong. Yes, maybe to face whatever justice is applied in Hong Kong, but at least to be released from the mainland Chinese prison, to be given due process, to be given access to lawyers, to be given access to their families and the medical care that they need, and to be treated safely and for their well-being to be guaranteed. So I want to wish every Hong Konger, and especially every person who is currently in prison or under arrest, the families of those who are detained, and most particularly the 12 Hong Kong youth and their families, the blessings and good wishes of Mid-Autumn Festival, the hopes for a better day tomorrow, and a commitment on my part to work for that day when everyone in Hong Kong can live once again with freedom and without fear. Yesterday I saw a picture of a young student in Hong Kong in an MTR station reading the Apple Daily newspaper, surrounded by police. It cannot be a crime to read a newspaper on a station platform, and yet in Hong Kong it's treated as a crime. In solidarity, I went to my local station in London with a copy of Apple Daily and took a photograph reading it to say that reading a newspaper is not a crime. And I will go on fighting and working for the day when people can read newspapers in Hong Kong safely and without fear and freely. So thank you for gathering here tonight. Thank you for inviting me to Manchester. Thank you to our friends who've interpreted for me. I'm sorry that I couldn't say everything I've said in Cantonese, but I'll learn more and I'll try better next time. But it's good to be with you. Let's work for the freedom of the 12 Hong Kong youths. Yet let's continue to fight for the freedom of Hong Kong, and I will be with you all the way. Gong for Hong Kong, 時代革命。光復香港，時代革命。光復香港，時代革命。昂首舉個神，那後聲響亮，行自由，位於這裏，以為信念從沒退後。
今日中秋節啦，咁但係我相信大家可能睇新聞都睇到，其實有好多手足都係同唔到屋企人過一個中秋節嘅，即係唔好話除咗我哋呢12位手足，亦都有好多手足可能已經流亡咗去外地，同到佢哋屋企人去團聚。
我是支持香港人的，我是支持香港民主和香港自由的。我会永远跟你们在一起。只要我活着一天，我就会支持香港，做真正的中国，真正的香港，自由的香港，自由的中國而奮鬥。唔該。
喺呢段時間裏邊咧，我自己就即係一家大細嚟到英國，咁啊可能感受咧冇一啲逃難嘅手足同心。講光復香港、時代革命都唔得，我覺得。我哋嚟到英國嘅朋友，一定要繼續支持佢哋。雖然我哋未必翻到香港，但係我哋好。
I would like to story about my friend. So he was in the airport. He was about to take off from the airport, and he said, "I can finally take a breath of freedom." Such freedom is we don't think it is a privilege. We think it is something natural. For Hong Kongers to live in this place. In Hong Kong, such freedom is an unreachable privilege, and we must continue our fight with all our efforts and resources to help those people in Hong Kong to enjoy the freedom they deserve.
講，可能好多手足、好多朋友都面對緊白色恐怖。
If we live in Hong Kong, we cannot say and write whatever we want. Even we just simply cannot a white paper, that means nothing. We still have to live in white terror, afraid of being arrested by the police.
都係喺英國嘅曼城，喺英國呢度生活，大家如果可以出聲嘅
，We are living in UK. We cannot understand the pain and suffering those who live in Hong Kong is experiencing. And that is why we need to do whatever we can in every possible way to help them. It doesn't matter how you do your thing. Even you are just a keyboard fighter, you can still do great contribution.
光復香港，時代革命！光復香港，時代革命！撐手足，撐到底！撐手足，撐到底！黑警，你知啊！
困難嘅，所以咧，如果大家真係知道有家長可以收容嘅咧，唔怕講俾我聽嘅。光復香港，時代革命！光復香港，時代革命！光復香港，光復香港！
告示威福頭先曝光，咪嗰晚無嚟又8號。 I was having a look at it. Who's he putting his hands on? Come on. Who's he putting his hand on? That's assault, that. Your camera's destroyed.
Call the police.
What do you mean call the police? We can need the police.
I think that's an assault.
Mad, bro. Go on, do an assault, you bad man.
And you call the police.
Do an assault. Do an assault. Dickhead, bro.
Oh, what? Okay, please don't.
Move your camera. Move your camera.
Okay, thank you.
You should tell us, okay?
Go away!
Oh, yeah.
Sorry.
You don't have to be violent, you know?
Police officers,